Well, we're joined now by UKIP's Patrick O'Flynn, who is in Westminster for us. Patrick, not that long ago, Douglas Carswell, as you will remember, said Eurosceptics should rally around David Cameron because he's the only potential Prime Minister committed to an in-out referendum. He's right.
Well, I think Douglas, as a Conservative Eurosceptic, was wanting to give David Cameron the benefit of the doubt immediately after UKIP had forced him into that U-turn about an in-out referendum being the right way to go. But certainly through the early part of this year, Douglas became convinced that David Cameron's just not serious. And that David Cameron was really, at best, just planning a kind of rerun of the Harold Wilson cynical, duplicitous deceit of the British people, a kind of a fake renegotiation, sort of given rocket boosters by the establishment and their media supporters, to trap Britain in through a rigged referendum, and he didn't find that particularly attractive.
Right, what do you say to that, Tim Lawton?
Look,
is that it?
Look, if UKIP and Douglas are serious about wanting a referendum, and if Patrick thinks that the Prime Minister is not serious about renegotiation, then we can have a referendum if we have a Conservative government, and he and perhaps myself and many others can vote no and come out. By doing what Douglas has done, he's a great thinker, Douglas. I like Douglas, but this is a serious and bizarre error of judgment. He has made having that referendum, which we are all committed to. There is no prospect of a Conservative government by 2017 not having a straight in-out question referendum on our future membership of the EU. By jumping ship like this, by making it less likely we'll have a Conservative government and more likely we'll have a Labour government, there will be no referendum. He has shot himself in the foot.
It's damning, though, isn't it, that he says he's lost faith in the Prime Minister on the renegotiation. He just doesn't think there's anything in that it's a sham, and he's not alone, is he, in the Tory party?
I mean, it's not helpful, and if that's what he thinks, then, frankly, it doesn't really matter, because he can vote no.
Patrick O'Flynn, there will be many, and there are many Conservative politicians who will say you're handing the election to Labour.
Well, I think it's quite interesting that Tim Lawton seemed to come close there to saying the Conservatives are going to lose the next election. I think that's quite a novel,
I'm not sure
vote-garnering strategy.
I'm not sure he said that, but answer the question about it letting Labour in.
Well, look, British politics, the state it's in, it's fundamentally a matter of trust needing to be rebuilt. And I remember from 3 or 4 years ago, the Conservative Party passionately supporting the sustaining of the first-past-the-post system, because they said everyone just stands for what they believe in. People have one vote for their first choice party, and that's the way to go. Now they seem to think that it's just occurred to them, oh dear, it looks like we can't win under this system, and they're trying to impose on UKIP some special duty to stand aside to manipulate the electorate on this inferior electoral system that they supported all along. Democracy demands that we stand and fight, and we offer the voters what we believe in, and we'll see how they respond.
Well, let's come to any agreements that are made. I mean, Tim Lawton, you know, there have been reports of almost 100 Tory MPs going into the next election with a personal pledge to leave the European Union, come what may in terms of the renegotiation. Will you do that?
No, because I have said, and the Fresh Start Group is all about getting a serious renegotiation, and when we have a serious renegotiation, we decide if it's good enough or not.
Will you go easy on those Tory MPs who do make personal pledges in the manifesto?
Well, look, I'm delighted to see that once again, with the UKIP boot on their throats, more and more Tory MPs are shifting their position. But again, I remember back to October.
Or maybe they always felt that.
Can I just finish? I remember back to October 2011. There weren't 300 Conservative MPs supporting an in-out referendum. There were 81 against a 3-line whip from David Cameron, who's saying it wasn't in the national interest. This Prime Minister and this government, they have no bottom line, as we see on education policy. That was supposed to be the bottom line. They just threw the Secretary of State overboard. People don't trust this government.
Fine. All right, we'll come to trust in a minute, because I want to ask you about Roger Lord. But on the issue, will you go easy on Tory candidates in seats where they have made personal pledges in their manifestos?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, the thing is, if they can persuade local UKIP associations that they're thoroughly good eggs, then maybe at a local level there will be some going easy, and that applies to Labour Eurosceptics just as much, or even Lib Dems. And I believe that Jeremy Brown, in your studio today, he's certainly on the sceptic wing of the Liberal Democrats, although I have to say that is very much a relative term.
Right. Well, we'll come to your scepticism in just a moment. What about Labour? Why isn't Clacton a target seat for Labour? I mean, it used to be a Labour seat. Why are you not going for it? Is it because you have nothing to offer the people of Clacton, because you won't even promise an in-out referendum?
No, nothing could be further from the truth in terms of what the Labour Party can offer the people of Clacton.
But you're nowhere, are you?
Whether it's housing, jobs, education, transport, the bread and butter of politics. What we've got here is like a replay of what happened to John Major. And we remember those men in the striped blazers. I think he referred to them in a perhaps unprintable word, as I remember.
Don't use it on the programme.
I won't use it on the programme. But that's where we were. And what do we see again? All of this playing out. And that's because UKIP...
But why is Labour not a player then?
Well, I will give UKIP a small amount of credit here. I hate doing it, but actually they've tapped into a nerve of the British people around Europe and around immigration.
Which you failed to do.
And what that then says to mainstream parties like mine and the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats is all of us have got to have some real answers for the British public on immigration and Europe. But what I hope this by-election does is expose UKIP on the NHS. They want to privatise it. On taxation. They want one tax rate for everybody, no matter how rich you are. You know, none of that comes across, Patrick. And I like Patrick. But Patrick, you're a one-club pony, I'm afraid.
Right, OK, but just before we go back to Patrick on that, Patrick, what about Roger Lord? What's happened to him? Because the headline in one of the papers says, I'm going to rip his throat out. That's Douglas Carswell, because you have done the very thing you hate about the establishment parties. You've parachuted a candidate in over the head of local democracy.
I don't think anyone could say Douglas Carswell has been parachuted into Clacton. What happened, the party followed its rules, which say when there's a by-election, the National Executive Committee gets to vote on who the candidate should be. They overwhelmingly endorsed Douglas Carswell. I must just take Hazel up on her ridiculous assertions on the NHS. I think she'll find that it's Labour peers in the House of Lords like Lord Winston and Lord Warner. They're the people who want to force charging in the NHS. UKIP stands behind the NHS, four square. We just want it to be a national health service and not the world's health service, which is what Labour turned it into. And also on a flat tax, no, we're not in favour of a flat tax, but we are in favour in general of giving working people a bigger break and keeping more of their money.
Right, well, when the manifesto gets written, as we've heard from Nigel Farage, it's yet to be finalised. We'll know exactly. But Tim Lawton, the migration figures haven't helped, have they? You know, net migration has soared in the last year to 243,000, give or take 1,000 or 2,000, and you promised to get the figures to under 100,000 by May next year.
And we
That's
haven't. We haven't, and it looks highly unlikely it's going to happen by next year. So we've got to look at new measures. And this whole business about UKIP surging and the polls, it's not just about the EU, it is about immigration, it's about open borders, and that is going to have to be addressed.
Patrick O'Flynn, thank you.